I was born in Leeds in 1942, halfway through the Second World War, and Leeds, along with dreams and muses, has always been one of the main inspirations of my poems. The poet Michael Haslam believes that Bridge over the Aire, my immensely long narrative poem, is my best poem and all the other poems are just footnotes, but I personally believe that this poem, a very short poem called Leeds, is actually my best poem to date. Leeds. Oh, my beloved city, how many times have I deserted you for the sights and sounds of Babylon? How often, and from how far, have I conjured your broad boulevards, O quartier latin, crowded street cafes with white and scarlet awnings, gold adornings on stone cupolas, Byzantine domes, and plinths of equine statuary before the Gare du Nord, grumbling fading faience of the Gare de l'Est. Often, oh how often, did I mingle with your crowds, crossing the Pont Mirabeau in their Sunday best, regretting my lost loves, watching the barges snail along the Seine, hearing the bells of the Angelus dawn. Exiled in the south and in a new century, I recall leisurely Sundays on the Grand Jatte. The children in sun hats knelt by their boats, unfurling handkerchiefs for sails and for supreme farewells. Shall I return, steamer with your poised masts, raising anchor for exotic climes? The bells of Sacré-Cœur shake rickety tables where old men in blazers sport the Légion d'honneur. Priests in berettas sip green chartreuse over their breviaries, while Wilde and Gide stroll round Père Lachaise, vying to outdo each other's tinted memories of soft-skinned Moroccan boys. Weary of their weariness and of my own, and of Rimbaud and Verlaine's battle of strophe and antistrophe and rhetoric's demise, I take a lacquered tram to the Bois de Boulogne, hoping to catch Miss Darnget's last song. And now I'll read the first part of Bridge over the Aire, which is called Against the Grain, and it's prefaced by a quotation from William Dawson of Hackney in 1704, which is two lines: Oxford be silent, I this truth must write, Leeds hath for rarities undone thee quite. Well, it's Friday the 13th, so I'd better begin with luck, as I prepare for a journey to the north, the place where I began, and I was lucky before I was born, for the red-hot shrapnel fell and missed my mother by an inch as she walked through the Blitz in Bradford in 1941. Sidney Graham, this poem is for you, although we never met. Your feet have walked on the waters of poetic faith. Hold out a hand for me to grasp, a net to catch the dancing reflections of the midnight stars, and smooth the green tongue of the sea wave where it speaks to me as I slide from my mother's turning side. For years I lived in the gardens of fire, and flames robed time in memory and desire. Icicles climbed 6 inches up the kitchen window, then 6 inches down, and 6 feet of snow lay against the POWs as they marched with hefted shovels from Nostrop's cottage camp, with curling smoke signalling from crooked stacks. Yards from where I lay, Hendry and Moore sat in their attic conceiving the apocalypse, and my natal stars were their ineffable words. Shut off the telephone. I hear another bell. It is St. Hilda's tinny tone, one note repeated, tolling birth and death and all that lies between, insistent, punitive, breaking the Sabbath silence and the bell rope like a hangman's noose, hymnals like tawses, incense like choking fog, the procession to the altar a parade of the dead, and God was over the road in the pink and blue threaded lupins, massed behind the rusted padlock of the gate to the unused path by the bridge over the railway. I began this prayer of poetry in poverty, and this never-ending song started in silence after the bells quietened and Sunday was in church or still in bed, as I watched the Tusky growing in the fecund darkness. The shed was holy, warm, and in wonder I felt it move, and on my scooter I flew over the holy stones of Jerusalem the golden. My wide eyes wandered over the Aire at the coal barges as they sneaked beneath the bridge in black tarpaulin shrouds, and clouds of steam hissed from the easy road laundry, the breath of a monster, half man, half machine, the terrifying figures in a dream. And on the Empire's stage I saw Dr. Wonder's mechanical robot raise an axe and chop in half his master, and the two halves haunted me always, their fusion and diffusion some terrible portent to meet me in darkness and in dreams. Luck, where did I leave you? By the paddling pool in East End Park? By the sea wave, as I explored the green springs of my birth in the bare hedges of Nostrop, where I began this present pilgrimage, by Joyce Summersgill's side, as she ran from the shouting man, and in disarray began this never-ending flight, and still at 54 I run, I know not why or where, and death cannot be far from this half-open door. For luck I count each cobble, there's enough beneath the ginnel to take a breath, and that's the luck I need to live on. In the dark I saw a spark light up and whirl and twirl around my head, and as it hissed I drew in silver a lucky 7. Spender, Stephen, Sir, whichever name you now prefer, it is irrelevant. You're dead, and but a 1 or 2 poem man, I fear. High and clear I hear your voice caressing Rilke's elegies, relating them to liberty, of which you had so little, shackled as you were to your poetic chair. In Leeds I listened to your praise of famous men, a famous man yourself, your own voice drowned by London's roar. Leeds town hall's portico is grand, and grander it grows with money and with prose, but still I see in the rain and dark the Ritz that's boarded up, its exquisite carved facade crumbling, its royal lions weeping, its stone flowers fading. The Scala too is gone, even the street where it stood, only the river and the canal are untouched in their flow. By the office lock I go at dawn, total anarchy is moored by Milly Molly Mandy, in perfect rhythm a man cycles on the towpath, his dog on a lead, running beside, they do not notice me or falter in their stride. At dawn in Leeds I was lost. Once I had left the lock, car park, office block, Grand Hotel looming, and no path, but then I found Back Lane, every window blocked, every inch cobbled, a road to nowhere, built 100 years ago. I found a gas lamp, anchored to a corner, rusty and forgotten, in the glare of the 1,000,000-watt Yorkshire electricity tower of steel, for the new museum, guns before butter, and I wonder, Christian visionary poet or regional romantic, is there any longer a place in this city for me? By Kirkgate Market, alone at night, I wandered, the parish church's stone, lit by 100 bulbs, but its graveyard shifted aside. Where are the banked stones of the dead? Behind screens they raised their bones and counted their skulls and moved them in barrows. The railway's banks are buttressed with the moved memorial stones. The diggers wore sacking over their faces and burned their shovels. Every garden and park is a hypothesis for God. When I hear a distant buzz, I cannot tell if it is a bee or saw. That is what we must decide. Patterned being or random chance, God or nothing, your choice and mine. The cafe by the lake was closed, but when I asked they opened. Was it God or chance made hearts beat like a butterfly's wing in January cold? Good and bad, a choice not chance. At 16 I decided to be a poet, writing another's love poems, earning my first praise. My verses were appalling until I learned from Eliot and Alvarez, praise where praise is due. The cafe staff are chatting in subdued tones, wearing white, wondering if they'll survive the winter. So do I. At 54 I must decide for poetry. My son's educated, just, one at Balliol, one at the Royal College. I've cast my lot with Lady Luck. I own no property but a book. In Rounday's tropical world, Nepalese trumpets glow in red and yellow like mendicant priests. The waterfall roars like Ladore, and I am more myself here than anywhere. The morning sun is melting the dome of Leeds Town Hall. Frost on Kirkstall Abbey stone is falling into the air. At 54, my dreams have ceased. The bowling green at East End Park has gone. The trams have stopped. The purple gondola with gold sashes locked in a museum. Jeanie has gone, and Chris and Margaret, and Kirgit Market's towers are in flames of ice and snow on Magdalen Bridge, with two figures in the deer park, wandering in white flurries of February dusk. James Fenton, you were king of Oxford poetry, and Seamus Heaney holds the laureate's crown, with sceptre and with gown. The carved heads have grown on grey Sheldonian stone. The railings on the ramparts of York Wall held my breath as I walked with my 10-year-old spirit in sun and rain, wind willing me on, while no one knew where I had gone. With every car alarm, I heard the air raid siren's song. Waterloo Road's bomb hole, big enough to hold a bus that could not stop. Morris the butcher gave a craning book I filled in until the all clear went. I spent a childhood on the spaces of Red Riding Hood's cloak, and the gap between the wolf's teeth I craned in with crimson. Ellaby Lane School stood at the hilltop over the hollows. Its onion dome and green railings grieved the abandoned streets of memory. Only Bridgefield Place remained with the cafe, and I was left to wander the hollows, searching the stones to find the flowers of history, and buttercups chinned my shadow, doorposts askew with worn steps leading nowhere. My father's grey dressing gown has gone, and his hat and gloves are lost. The bus he waited for no longer runs from the Bridgefield. Down the hill past the hollows, Ellaby Lane School is a shadow on a snapshot, with me sitting on a car bonnet by Bayford's yard, holding a dying pup. The aunt I loved the best was worst of all. She slept away the war with every man she knew, while Uncle Jack played tanks in Africa and learned pontoon at Alamein, and then broke every window pane on his return. And Grandad Nicky said, decide to go or keep your bride. And pride lost that day, and Lucifer lay low, and 6 children grew in rough lee by the poplar's side. And when I shared their meal it was a feast of love, and Auntie Betty smiled as I sat beneath her on the bench. There's always room for one more inside, and I went along for the ride.